Veda didn't know the Alpha King had come to Baron Halvard's estate looking for her. She didn't know he'd spent 6 months tracing rumors through black markets and whispered tavern secrets, following a thread that led to this crumbling manor on the edge of nowhere. She didn't know that when he stood in the Baron's treasure vault surrounded by gold and ancient relics, he would look past all of it and see only her. All she knew was that the guest wing needed fresh linens, the silver needed polishing before tonight's feast, and if she didn't finish before the Baron's mysterious visitor arrived, there would be consequences. There were always consequences. The manor had been Veda's prison for 7 years. She moved through its corridors like a ghost, invisible to the lords and ladies who visited, beneath the notice of even the other servants. That was by design. The less people noticed her, the safer she remained. Her mother had taught her that lesson with her dying breath. Hide what you see, little one. Hide it, or they'll burn you for it. Veda scrubbed the banister of the east staircase, her knuckles raw from lye soap. Around her, the manor buzzed with frantic energy. Baron Halvard had been preparing for this visit for weeks, driving the staff to exhaustion. Whoever was coming must be important, powerful. She didn't care. Powerful men came and went. They feasted, they negotiated, and they left. And Veda remained, working off a debt that never seemed to shrink no matter how many years she gave it. 4,000 gold marks. That's what her mother had owed when the fever took her. A staggering sum for medicine that hadn't worked, for a healer who'd arrived too late, for a funeral the Baron had graciously provided with interest compounding ever since. Veda had been 16 then. Now, at 23, she'd calculated that at her current wages minus room and board, she'd be free in approximately 47 years. If she lived that long. She paused at the window, looking out at the gray afternoon. Rain threatened on the horizon, dark clouds piling against the mountains. And beneath the clouds, she saw them. Riders. At least 30. Moving in tight formation up the valley road. At the front, a banner she didn't recognize, black silk with a silver wolf's head, teeth bared. Her stomach tightened. Then she saw the threads. They appeared without warning, the way they always did when her gift decided to surface. Glowing lines connecting each rider to the one at the center. Silver threads, bright and unwavering. Loyalty, she thought. Absolute loyalty. These men would die for whoever rode at their head. She'd never seen bonds so strong, so untainted by the shadow of doubt or secret resentment. Who commanded that kind of devotion? Veda! She flinched, the vision scattering like startled birds. Marta, the head housekeeper, stood at the base of the stairs, her face pinched with urgency. The Baron wants all senior staff in the Great Hall. Now. The king arrives within the hour. Veda's blood ran cold. King. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The one they called the Wolf of Valdris. The ruler who'd united 5 warring packs under one crown through a combination of brilliant strategy and, if the rumors were true, brutal efficiency. And he was here, at Baron Halvard's estate. Why? She descended the stairs on trembling legs, her mind racing. The Baron was wealthy but not politically significant. His lands produced timber and little else. There was no strategic value here, no alliance worth the king's personal attention. Unless the king wanted something the Baron had. Something specific. Someone. The thought surfaced unbidden, and Veda crushed it immediately. She was nobody. A maid with a dangerous secret and a debt she'd never escape. Kings didn't come looking for women like her. But as she entered the great hall and took her place among the other servants, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, something she wouldn't be able to hide from. The king entered Baron Halvard's great hall like a storm made flesh. Veda had positioned herself near the back, half hidden behind a marble pillar. From there, she had a clear view of the proceedings while remaining invisible. Just another servant. Just another shadow. But when he walked through those doors, every instinct she'd developed over 23 years of survival screamed at her to run. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair pulled back from a face that looked carved from granite. Not handsome in the soft, courtly way of the nobles who visited the Baron. His features were too sharp, too predatory. A scar bisected his left eyebrow, and his jaw was shadowed with stubble that suggested he'd been riding hard. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Pale amber, almost gold, catching the candlelight and reflecting it back like a wolf's. And they were scanning the room with methodical precision, passing over the Baron's bowing form, the nervous servants, and the elaborate tapestries. Searching. The threads appeared again, and Veda nearly gasped. Every man who'd entered with the king blazed with silver connections leading back to him, but the king himself. He burned. Power radiated from him in waves she could almost feel, ancient and vast and other. And wrapped around that power, she saw something she'd never witnessed before. A thread leading outward, beyond the walls, stretching toward something or someone far away. A bond, fraying, desperate. He's looking for someone he's losing, she realized. Someone connected to him by blood. Your Majesty. Baron Halvard's voice trembled with barely contained excitement. Welcome to my humble estate. I am honored beyond words. You may dispense with ceremony. The king's voice was low, rough-edged. I'm not here for flattery. The Baron faltered. Of course, of course. Perhaps refreshment after your journey? Or I could show you to your chambers? The vault. The single word fell like a blade. Baron Halvard blinked. Your Majesty? You wrote to my council. The king's amber gaze pinned the Baron in place. You claim to possess treasures of considerable value, artifacts from the old wars, relics with unusual properties. He paused, and something dangerous flickered across his expression. You offered them in exchange for my favor. I've come to see if your claims have merit. The Baron's face cycled through shock, fear, and then greedy calculation. Yes, of course. The vault. I'll take you there immediately. He snapped his fingers at the servants. Clear the hall. Prepare the lower chambers. Veda moved with the others toward the servants' exit, relief washing through her. She would disappear into the kitchens, wait out this visit, and the staff stays. She froze. The king hadn't raised his voice, but somehow it carried through the entire hall. His eyes had stopped scanning. They were fixed directly on her. I want everyone present, he continued, his gaze never leaving hers, when I make my selection. Selection. The word hung in the air like a death knell. Baron Halvard practically vibrated with excitement. Of course, Your Majesty. This way, this way. The vault was beneath the manor, carved into the bedrock. Veda had never been inside, had only heard whispers about the fortunes the Baron hoarded behind those iron doors. Now she walked through them in a daze, surrounded by other servants, her heart hammering against her ribs. Gold, mountains of it. Coins and bars and jewelry spilling from chests that lined the walls. Weapons mounted on racks. Ancient swords. A bow that seemed to shimmer with its own light. A spear tipped with black stone that made her skin crawl. And artifacts. Dozens of them. Crystals pulsing with inner fire. Books bound in leather that looked disturbingly like skin. A mirror that reflected nothing at all. Choose any treasure, the Baron declared expansively, spreading his arms. Anything in this vault is yours, Your Majesty. A gift, a token of my loyalty, and... The king walked past the gold, past the weapons, past the artifacts that hummed with power. He stopped directly in front of Veda. The servants scattered backward. The Baron's mouth fell open. Veda couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Those amber eyes held hers, searching, measuring. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in them, the desperation hidden beneath layers of iron control. And she could see the thread, the one stretching outward, fraying, weakening with every passing moment. "This one," the king said quietly. Then he took her hand. The touch was electric, a shock that ran through her entire body, lighting up nerves she didn't know she had. Her vision blurred, and for one terrifying moment she saw everything. The king's memories, his grief, a young man's face that looked like his but softer, and then darkness, chains, and a distant heartbeat growing fainter. "Brother," she thought. "He's searching for his brother." She came back to herself with a gasp. The king was still holding her hand, his grip firm but not painful. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had shifted. He'd felt it too. "Your Majesty," Baron Halvard sputtered, "surely you jest. That's merely a servant. I have treasures worth—" "I've made my choice." The words were final, absolute. Veda found her voice. "I'm not a treasure, I'm not property. You can't just— You're in debt to the Baron, are you not?" The king's thumb brushed across her knuckles, and another spark shot through her. 4,000 gold marks. Her mouth went dry. How did he know that? "I'll pay it. Triple. Consider it done." The Baron made a strangled sound of delight. 12,000 gold marks had just fallen into his lap. But Veda's world was spinning. "That doesn't mean I'll go with you." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "No, it doesn't." He released her hand slowly, almost reluctantly. "But I'm asking you to anyway." "Why?" The king glanced at the Baron, at the gathered servants, then back to her. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that only she could hear. "Because my brother is dying in a place I cannot find. Because you can see what others cannot. And because you're the only person in 6 months of searching who made the threads light up when I touched them." Veda's heart stopped. "He knows. He knows what I can see." "How?" "Not here." His eyes flickered with urgency. "Come with me. 1 month. Help me find him. And then you're free. No debts. No chains. Just freedom." She should refuse, should scream for help, call him mad, and run as far and fast as her legs could carry her. But that thread, the one connecting him to his brother, was dimming even as she watched. If she didn't help, it would go dark entirely, and she knew, with a certainty that came from somewhere deeper than logic, that when it did, something in the king would die with it. 1 month, she heard herself say, and then I walk away. "You have my word." Behind them, Baron Halvard was already counting his gold. He had no idea he'd just sold the king the key to everything. The Baron provided a private chamber for their discussion, his own study, hastily cleared of papers and personal effects. Veda stood near the door, every muscle coiled to run, while the king dismissed his guards with a single gesture. The door closed. They were alone. "You think I'm going to hurt you?" It wasn't a question. Veda kept her back to the wall. "I think powerful men don't pay 12,000 gold for a maid unless they want something dangerous." "Fair." He moved to the window, putting distance between them, giving her space. "My name is Calix. Calix Valdris. I've ruled the Northern Territories for 9 years since my father was killed in the Blackmore Uprising." She knew the name. Everyone did. The young alpha who'd crushed a rebellion at 19 and spent the years since building an empire. "My brother Marek was taken 8 months ago." His voice remained steady, but she saw his hands clench at his sides. "Ambushed during a diplomatic mission to the Eastern Reach. His entire escort was slaughtered. Marek was kept alive." "Ransom." "That's what I assumed. I waited for demands. Emptied half my treasury preparing to pay." Calix turned to face her, and the grief in his eyes made her chest ache. "No demands came. Instead, I started receiving pieces of him." Veda's stomach lurched. A lock of hair. A bloodied ring. A letter written in his hand, begging me to find him. Calix's jaw tightened. Someone is torturing my brother to torment me, and I cannot find him. I've sent trackers, spies, assassins. Every lead ends in smoke. Every trail goes cold. And you think I can help? I know you can. He reached into his coat and withdrew something wrapped in dark leather. When he unfolded it, Veda saw a silver chain, simple and unadorned, stained rust brown at the clasp. Blood. Merrick's blood. You see connections. Calix's voice was low. Threads between people, between objects and their owners. You read the history of things through touch. Her pulse quickened. How do you know that? Your mother was Seralith of the Thornwood Pack, a thread seer, one of the last. The name hit her like a physical blow. No one had spoken her mother's true name in 7 years. To Baron Halvard, she'd been simply the debtor's widow. To the other servants, she'd been that strange woman who died. But Calix knew. My father consulted her once, when I was young, he continued. She read a treaty document and told him which lords were lying. She saved his life. He held out the chain. She had a daughter. I've spent 6 months confirming that daughter ended up here, in Halvard's service, hiding her gift, surviving. Veda's throat constricted. My mother was burned for what she could do. Not by your father. After, when we fled to the lowlands, a village healer saw her read a sick child's blanket and screamed, "Witch!" The mob came that night. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. No. Calix's voice was heavy. It doesn't. But I can promise you this. In my territory, your gift isn't witchcraft. It's a blessing. Thread seers were honored before the purges. Some of my oldest advisors still remember. He set the chain on the table between them. 1 month. You read the objects connected to Merrick's captivity. You helped me trace the threads back to whoever took him. And when it's done, you have a choice. Return here. Go anywhere in the world you want. Or, he paused. Stay in Valdris, under my protection, never hiding again. Veda stared at the chain. Even from here, she could feel it calling to her, that pull her gift created when something held strong emotional residue. What if I can't find him? What if the threads lead nowhere? Then you still go free. The debt is already paid. This isn't a transaction, Veda. It's a request. His amber eyes held hers. I'm asking for your help. That's all. She wanted to refuse, wanted to protect herself the way she'd learned to do. But she kept seeing that thread stretching from his chest, fraying, dimming. A brother dying somewhere in the dark, and a king desperate enough to walk past gold and take a maid's hand. 1 month, she said. I want it in writing. Not writing. Calix shook his head. Something stronger. A blood oath. Veda's eyes narrowed. You'd bind yourself to a servant with blood magic? I'd bind myself to the woman who might save my brother's life. He drew a knife from his belt, dark metal etched with symbols that seemed to shift when she looked directly at them. Blood oaths can't be broken. Not by me, not by you. If I swear to free you after 1 month, I'm bound by more than honor. And if I swear to help you, then you're bound to try. Not to succeed. No oath can guarantee that. Just to try. It was more than fair. More than she'd expected from a king. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. Vida held out her hand. Fine. Do it. Calix moved closer, and she caught his scent, pine and wood smoke and something wilder beneath. He took her hand gently, turned it palm up, and met her eyes. This will hurt. I've survived worse. Something flickered across his expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. The blade was sharp. She barely felt the cut until blood welled up, dark and warm. Calyx made a matching slice across his own palm without flinching. I, Calyx Valdris, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, swear to release Veda of all debts and obligations within 1 month's time. I swear to protect her, to honor her freedom, and to let her go when our bargain is complete. The words hung in the air, shimmering with power. Your turn, he said softly. Veda took a breath. I, Veda of Thornwood. The name felt strange on her tongue, like reclaiming something lost. Swear to help Calyx Valdris find his brother. I swear to use my gift in service of this search for 1 month. And when that month ends, I walk free. Calyx pressed his palm to hers. The world exploded. Light, heat, a rush of sensation that went beyond physical. She felt him, not just his hand, but him. His grief, vast and churning, his fear carefully contained, his loneliness, so deep it made her want to weep. And beneath all of that, something else. A thread, golden and bright, snapping into place between them. Not the silver of loyalty or the gray of obligation, something new, something ancient. Mate. The word surfaced from somewhere primal, and she shoved it away violently. Calyx's eyes had gone wide, his grip on her hand tightened, and she knew. He'd felt it too. Neither of them spoke. The blood magic sealed itself, power rushing through their joined palms and settling into something unbreakable. But the other thing, the golden thread now connecting them heart to heart, had nothing to do with oaths. That was something else entirely. Calyx released her hand first. His movements were careful, controlled, like a man handling something volatile. That was... He stopped, cleared his throat. The oath is sealed. Yes. Veda's voice came out steadier than she felt. It is. They didn't mention the other part. The part still humming between them, invisible but undeniable. But when he handed her a cloth to wrap her palm, their fingers brushed, and that spark flared again. She pulled away quickly. So did he. 1 month, Veda told herself firmly, and then I'm gone. But the golden thread pulsed in her chest, warm and patient, like it knew something she didn't. They rode out at dawn. Veda had never owned a horse, had never ridden anything finer than a hay cart. But Calyx provided a mare the color of autumn leaves, gentle-eyed and sure-footed, and one of his guards, a weathered man named Brennick, showed her how to sit, how to hold the reins. She'll follow the king's stallion, Brennick said gruffly. Just don't pull too hard and you'll be fine. The journey took 3 days. 3 days of forest paths and mountain passes, of sleeping in camps where Calyx's warriors formed a protective ring around her tent. She barely saw him during the ride. He stayed at the front, conferring with scouts, studying maps. But she felt him. That golden thread stretched between them, pulsing faintly whenever he drew near. She hated it. She also couldn't stop thinking about it. On the 3rd morning, they crested a ridge and the city of Valdris spread before her. Veda's breath caught. It sprawled across a valley cradled by snow-capped peaks, a city of white stone and dark timber that seemed to have grown from the mountains themselves. Rivers threaded through it like silver ribbons. Towers rose at intervals, flying the black and silver wolf banner. And at the center, built into the mountainside itself, stood the palace, a fortress of sharp angles and impossible architecture, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Home, Calyx said quietly. She hadn't heard him approach. He'd brought his horse alongside hers, close enough that their knees almost touched. It's... She searched for words. Not what I expected. What did you expect? Something colder, harsher. The corner of his mouth lifted. Give it time. But as they descended into the city, Veda realized he was being modest. The people who saw their king didn't cower or scatter. They called out greetings, waved, and smiled. Children ran alongside the horses laughing. An old woman threw flowers, and they looked at her with curiosity but not hostility. No suspicion, no whispered accusations. Inside the palace, the contradictions deepened. The exterior was fortress stark, all defensive walls and narrow windows. But the interior bloomed with warmth. Tapestries in rich colors, fires crackling in every hearth, the smell of bread baking somewhere nearby. A woman met them in the entrance hall, silver-haired, straight-backed, with eyes that missed nothing. Calyx. She pulled him into an embrace that he returned fiercely. "You found her?" "I found her." He stepped back, gesturing Veda forward. "Aunt Isoleth, this is Veda. She's going to help us find Marek." Isoleth studied her with those sharp eyes. Whatever she saw made her nod slowly. "You have Saralith's look about you. I knew your mother, child. Long ago." Veda's chest tightened. "You did?" "She helped us through a difficult time. The debt was never repaid." Isoleth took her hands, her grip warm and surprisingly gentle. "Perhaps now it will be." She was led to chambers that made her old servants' quarters look like a broom closet. A bedroom with a bed large enough for 4 people, covered in furs and silk. A private bathing room with hot water that flowed from taps. A wardrobe filled with clothes in her size. How had they known? In fabrics softer than anything she'd ever touched. A young woman named Priya arrived to help her bathe, and Vida found herself sinking into hot water for the first time in years. The tension in her muscles slowly unraveled. The grime of the journey floated away. And in the quiet, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined, Veda let herself feel something dangerous. Hope. Maybe this doesn't have to be a trap, she thought. Maybe, for once, something good is actually happening. But as she rose from the bath and caught sight of herself in the mirror, thin, scarred, eyes still wary, she pushed the thought away. 1 month, then freedom. She couldn't afford to want more than that. Still, when a servant delivered dinner to her room, roasted meat, fresh vegetables, bread still warm from the oven, wine that tasted like summer, she ate until she was full for the first time in 7 years, and she slept without nightmares. In the morning, the real work would begin. The objects, the visions, the search for a dying prince. But for one night, Veda let herself rest. The reading chamber was deep within the palace, a circular room lined with shelves holding objects wrapped in dark cloth. Veda stood at the center, her stomach churning with nerves. Calyx had laid everything on a stone table. The silver chain she'd seen before, a torn piece of fabric, dark wool stained with something that might have been mud or blood, a broken arrow shaft, the fletching singed. A letter, folded and refolded until the creases had worn thin, and a ring, simple gold band, sized for a man's hand. Marek's signet. Calyx's voice was heavy. It arrived 2 months ago. No message, just the ring in a box. Veda approached the table slowly. Even without touching anything, she could feel the objects humming with residual energy. Pain, fear, rage. "I need you to understand something," she said. "What I see isn't always linear. Sometimes it's fragments, emotions without context, and sometimes..." She hesitated. "Sometimes I feel what the person felt. Their pain becomes mine. If it's too much, I didn't say I wouldn't do it." She met his eyes. "I just need you to know that if I scream, it's not because I'm dying. It's because your brother was." Calyx's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Veda reached for the chain first. The moment her fingers closed around silver, the world dissolved. Cold. So cold. Stone walls pressing close, darkness absolute. Chains biting into wrists rubbed raw. A voice, somewhere above, laughing. "The king sends another search party. Should we leave them another gift?" A second voice, deeper, familiar somehow. Not yet. Let him suffer longer. Let him feel what it's like to lose everything. Pain. Searing. Deliberate. A scream that tears the throat. Veda dropped the chain, gasping. She was on her knees without remembering falling. Calyx crouched beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder, not quite touching. What did you see? Underground. Her voice shook. Stone cell, no windows. They're torturing him deliberately. One of the voices? One of them knows you. This is personal, Calyx. Whoever took Marek hates you specifically. His expression hardened into something lethal. Can you identify the voice? Not yet. But there's more. She reached for the fabric next, bracing herself. Movement. Being transported, wrapped in rough wool that smells of horses. A wagon, maybe. Voices arguing. Lord Vyrath wants him moved to the Northern Holding. Says the king's trackers are getting too close. The Northern Holding is 3 days' ride. He'll barely survive the journey. Then we'll send the king another piece to keep him occupied. Veda pulled back, nausea rolling through her. Lord Vyrath. That name. Do you know it? Calyx had gone very still. When he spoke, his voice was ice. Kolthun Vyrath. He's been on my council since my father's time. He helped me put down the Blackmoor uprising. He stopped, something cracking behind his eyes. He's Marek's godfather. The revelation hung between them like poison. Are you certain? Calyx's voice was rough. Could you have misheard? Veda picked up the arrow shaft. The vision hit immediately. Forest. Night. Marek's escort falling around him, arrows singing from the darkness. And there, stepping from the shadows, a face she didn't recognize, but Marek clearly did. Uncle? Marek's voice, young and confused. What? The man smiled. Your brother took everything from me. Now I take everything from him. She released the arrow, her hand trembling. It's him. Marek knew him, called him uncle. Calyx rose and moved to the window, his back rigid. For a long moment he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely audible. I trusted him. After my parents died, Vyrath was the one who counseled me, taught me to rule. When Marek was taken, he was the first person I turned to for advice. A bitter laugh escaped him. He helped me plan the search parties, suggested the routes, made sure we were always looking in the wrong place. He's been playing you from the beginning. Yes. Calyx turned, and the grief in his eyes had transformed into something colder. And now, I'm going to end him. Veda reached for the letter, the final piece. Let me see where they're holding Marek now. The other visions were older, but this... She unfolded the paper, and the vision slammed into her with brutal force. A different cell. Still underground, but warmer. A window, small and barred, showing pine trees and snow. Marek, thin and pale, but alive. Writing by candlelight, his hand shaking. Brother, if you're reading this, I'm still alive. The Northern Holding. I heard them say it's 3 days north of the Thornwood border. An old mining outpost, abandoned. They think you'll never find it. A door opening. The letter snatched away. Marek's cry of protest, cut short by a blow. Veda released the paper, breathing hard. I know where he is. An abandoned mine, 3 days north of Thornwood. And Calyx. She looked up, hope blazing through her exhaustion. He was alive when he wrote this. Weak, but alive. For the first time since she'd met him, Calyx smiled. It transformed his face, cracking through the grief and fury to reveal something younger, almost boyish. You did it. You actually... We're not done yet. But she was smiling too, despite everything. We still have to get him out. We will. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. The touch sent that familiar spark racing through her, the golden thread between them flaring bright. Veda, I don't know how to thank you. Save your brother first. Thank me later. His thumbs brushed across her knuckles, and she saw his gaze drop to her lips for just a moment before he stepped back, clearing his throat. Right. Yes. We ride at dawn. But something had shifted between them, something neither of them could ignore much longer. The night before the rescue, Veda couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering the palace corridors, eventually climbing to a balcony that overlooked the city. The moon hung heavy and full, casting silver light across the snow-capped peaks. She wasn't surprised when she heard footsteps behind her. Can't sleep either? Calyx moved to stand beside her at the railing. He'd shed his formal attire for simple linen, his hair loose around his shoulders. He looked younger like this, more human. Thinking about tomorrow. Worried? Terrified? She glanced at him. Aren't you? I've been terrified for 8 months. He leaned on the railing, staring out at the mountains. Tomorrow, one way or another, it ends. Either I get my brother back or I find out I'm too late. You're not too late. I saw him alive. Visions can be days old. Hours matter when someone's being tortured. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. I should have known. Vyrath was right there the whole time, and I never suspected. I let him hold my brother as a baby. Let him teach Marek to ride. And the whole time, he was waiting for his chance to destroy us. Veda turned to face him fully. Why does he hate you? Power. What else? Calyx's laugh was hollow. My father stripped his family's lands after the first uprising. Vyrath's father had supported the rebels. Everything was taken. Titles, wealth, legacy. My father let Kolthan keep his life and his council seat as a mercy. He shook his head. Some mercies breed nothing but poison. That's not your fault, isn't it? I'm the one who trusted him. I'm the one who didn't see. Veda reached out before she could stop herself, laying her hand on his arm. You saw a man who'd served your family for decades, a man who helped raise you after your parents died. Trusting him wasn't stupid. It was human. Calyx looked at her hand, then at her face. Something cracked behind his composure, shifting from grief to wonder. How do you do that? He asked quietly. Do what? Make me feel like maybe I'm not a complete failure. You're not any kind of failure. The words came out fiercer than she intended. You've spent 8 months tearing your kingdom apart trying to find your brother. You walked into a baron's vault and chose a servant over treasure because you believed she could help. You're not failing, Calyx. You're fighting. He stared at her for a long moment. Then his hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. When this is over, he said roughly, when Marek is home and Vyrath is dealt with, I want to ask you something. But not now. Not when you might feel obligated. Not when the oath still binds us. Veda's breath caught. What do you want to ask? To stay. Not as someone bound by blood magic. Not as a servant or a tool or a means to an end. His eyes burned into hers. As my equal. As my... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Your what? I felt it too. The confession seemed to cost him something. The bond, when our blood touched. The thread that has nothing to do with oaths. I've felt it every moment since. And I'm trying so hard to do this right, to give you the freedom I promised. But Veda, his voice dropped to a whisper. I've never wanted anything the way I want you. She should pull away, should remind him of the boundaries, the timeline, the 1,000 reasons this was impossible. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. He went rigid for a heartbeat. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with a desperation that stole her breath. His lips were warm, demanding, his hands tangling in her hair as he angled her head to deepen the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Veda pressed her forehead to his chest, His heart thundered beneath her ear. "Ask me," she whispered. "After tomorrow. Ask me to stay. And if you say no, then I say no, and you let me go." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "But I don't think I'm going to say no." Hope flickered across his face, raw and unguarded. "You don't? I've spent my whole life hiding, running, surviving." She touched his jaw, feeling the rasp of stubble against her palm. "I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. And when I think about what that might look like..." She swallowed. "You're in every version." Calyx pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. She felt him shudder, felt the emotion he'd been holding back finally cracking through. "Tomorrow," he said against her temple. "We save Marek. We end Virath. And then we figure out what this is. Together." "Together," she agreed. They stood wrapped in each other until the moon set, neither willing to let go. The attack came at dawn. Veda was in her chambers, dressing for the journey, when she heard the screams. She ran into the corridor to find chaos. Palace guards clashing with men in unmarked black armor. Fire spreading along a tapestry, and cutting through the smoke, a face she recognized from Marek's visions. Kolthan Virath. He was older than she'd expected, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of face that belonged on coins. But his eyes were cold, calculating, and they found her immediately. The thread seer. He smiled, and it was the cruelest thing she'd ever seen. "I was hoping Calyx would find you. Makes this so much more satisfying." Veda backed away, reaching for the knife Brennick had given her. "How did you know?" "I have eyes everywhere, girl. Did you think I'd spend 20 years planning my revenge without accounting for every variable?" He advanced, his own blade drawn. "When my spies told me Calyx was tracking a thread seer, I knew I had to act. Kill you before you could unravel everything. You're too late, I already saw. We know where Marek is." Virath's smile didn't waver. "Then Marek dies tonight. I've already sent the order. If I don't return by sunset, my men have instructions to slit his throat and dump his body where Calyx will find it." Horror flooded through her. "You'd kill your own godson?" "He was never mine. He was always Calyx's, the spare prince, beloved by everyone." Hatred twisted Virath's features. "Do you know what it's like to watch your family's legacy crumble while your enemy's thrives? To bow and scrape to the son of the man who destroyed everything your father built? No, you don't. But Calyx will. When I'm done, he'll know exactly what it feels like to lose everything." He lunged. Veda dodged, the blade whistling past her ear. Her own knife came up instinctively, slashing across his arm. Blood sprayed and Virath snarled, pressing harder. She wasn't a fighter. Wasn't trained. She managed to block one strike, two, but the third caught her shoulder, pain exploding through her nerves. Then Calyx was there. He came through the smoke like a demon, sword already swinging. Virath barely parried in time, stumbling backward. "You treacherous filth!" Calyx's voice was ice and fire combined. "You took my brother, you attacked my home, and now you dare threaten her? Your mate?" Virath laughed, circling. "Oh yes, I know about the bond. Another weakness to exploit. Does it hurt, knowing she'll die because of you?" Calyx didn't respond with words. He attacked. Veda pressed her hand to her bleeding shoulder, watching the two men clash with lethal precision. Calyx was faster, stronger, but Virath was cunning, fighting dirty, throwing smoke powder, kicking furniture into Calyx's path. "Marek dies at sunset," Virath shouted as he retreated toward a window. "Even if you kill me, even if you save your little seer, your brother dies tonight. Unless..." He paused at the sill. "Unless you let me go. Give me a head start. And maybe I'll send word to spare him." "You're lying." "Perhaps, but can you afford to risk it?" Calyx hesitated, and in that moment, Veda saw the thread, the silver bond between him and Merrick, flickering like a candle in a storm. "He's telling the truth about the Sunset Order," she gasped. "I can see it. But he won't send the countermand. He wants Merrick dead no matter what." Vyrath's face contorted with rage. "Which? I should have done it myself instead of leaving it to that mob." Something cold settled in Veda's chest. "What? Who do you think told that village healer what she was?" Vyrath's smile was poison. "Thread seers are too dangerous to let live. I made sure of it then. I'll make sure of it now." The revelation hit her like a physical blow, her mother's death. The mob. The flames. All because of him. Calyx moved before she could react. His sword flashed, catching Vyrath's blade and wrenching it away. A second strike brought the older man to his knees. "You killed her mother!" Calyx's voice was death itself. "You took my brother. You've terrorized my kingdom for 20 years. And I'd do it again." Vyrath spat blood, defiant to the end. "Your father should have killed me when he had the chance. That mercy was his greatest weakness. Don't make the same mistake." Calyx looked at Veda. Something passed between them, a question, an understanding. "No mercy," she said quietly. The sword fell. They rode hard. Calyx had left Vyrath's body for the crows and assembled 20 of his best warriors within the hour. Veda rode beside him, her shoulder hastily bandaged, refusing to be left behind. "The Sunset Order," she said as they galloped through the forest. "We have until tonight. Then we don't stop until we reach him." The abandoned mine was exactly where her vision had placed it, a crumbling entrance carved into a mountainside, surrounded by dead pine trees. Guards patrolled the perimeter, but they weren't expecting an attack. They'd been expecting Vyrath to return triumphant. Calyx's warriors hit them like a storm. Vida stayed back, as he'd made her promise, watching the battle unfold from the tree line. The fighting was brutal, efficient. Calyx's men had trained for this, and the guards, mercenaries, mostly, broke within minutes. Then Calyx disappeared into the mine. Veda couldn't stay back. She followed, ignoring Brennick's shout of protest, running through tunnels lit by guttering torches. She found them in the deepest chamber. Calyx was on his knees, cradling a figure so thin and pale it barely looked human, but she recognized the thread between them, that silver bond, flickering but still alive. "Marek. Is he alive?" Calyx's voice broke on the word. "Barely, but alive." Veda knelt beside them. Marek's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, searching. "Calyx?" The voice was a rasp, destroyed by screaming. "I'm here. I've got you. You're safe." "Took you long enough." The ghost of a smile crossed Marek's cracked lips. Then his gaze shifted to Veda. "Who?" "This is Veda. She found you. She saved you." Marek's hand twitched, reaching toward her. Veda took it carefully, and even through her exhaustion, she felt the warmth of gratitude flowing through the touch. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he passed out. 3 weeks later, Merrick was walking again. It had been a slow recovery. Healers working around the clock, Calyx barely leaving his brother's side, the entire palace holding its breath. But Merrick was strong, stronger than anyone had expected, and day by day the color returned to his face. Veda had kept her distance during those weeks. There were trials to oversee, Vyrath's co-conspirators exposed and executed, council positions to fill, a kingdom to reassure, and a month coming to an end. She was in the garden when Calyx found her, sitting on a bench beneath a snow-dusted tree. He looked different than he had that first night in the Baron's vault. The shadows under his eyes had faded. The grief that had weighed him down had lifted. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "The month ends tomorrow." "I know. The oath is fulfilled. You're free to go." He paused. I've prepared gold, horses, documents that will let you settle anywhere in the 5 territories. Everything I promised. Veda's chest tightened. Very thorough. I keep my word. Silence stretched between them. In the distance, she could hear Marek laughing at something. Actually laughing? A sound she'd thought she might never hear based on those visions of his suffering. Calyx. Wait. He turned to face her, taking her hands. Before you say anything, I need to ask. The way I promised I would. You don't have to? Yes, I do. He took a breath, and she saw the vulnerability beneath his careful composure. Veda, I love you. I've loved you since you looked me in the eye and demanded a blood oath because you didn't trust a king's word. I love your bravery, your fire, your refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Stay, he said simply, not as a servant, not as a debt repaid. Stay as my partner, my equal, my queen, if you'll have me. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Marry me, Veda. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. She thought about the girl she'd been, hiding in a baron's manor, scrubbing floors, dreaming of escape. That girl wouldn't have believed this moment was possible. But that girl had never met Calyx. Yes, she said, and the word came out strong, certain. Yes to all of it. His smile was blinding. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a joy that made her heart soar. From somewhere across the garden she heard Marek's voice. Finally! I was starting to worry I'd have to propose for him. They broke apart laughing. Your brother has terrible timing, Veda murmured. He's perfect, Calyx said. And so are you. The wedding was held on the spring equinox. Vida wore silver and midnight blue, colors that matched the bond shimmering between her and Calyx. The ceremony took place in the palace's great hall, filled with nobles, warriors, servants, and anyone else who wanted to witness their king marry the woman who'd saved his brother. Isoleth stood as witness. Marek, still thin but growing stronger every day, stood beside his brother, grinning like he'd orchestrated the whole thing. When Calyx spoke his vows, his voice carried through the hall without trembling. I promise to honor your choices, to respect your freedom, to love you not as a possession but as a partner. I promise that every day for as long as I live, I will prove that you made the right choice when you stayed. Veda felt tears streaming down her cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. I promise to stand beside you, she said, in darkness and light, in peace and war. I promise to use my gift not to hide, but to protect. And I promise that I will never stop choosing you, Calyx. Every day, for the rest of our lives. When they kissed, the crowd erupted. Later, after the feast and the dancing and the endless toasts, they escaped to their chambers. Calyx loved her slowly, reverently, until she saw stars. And afterward, they lay tangled together, the moonlight silver on their skin. Tell me something, Calyx murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. Something I don't know. Veda thought for a moment. When I was a child, before my mother died, she used to tell me stories about threadseers finding their mates. She said the bond was a gift, the universe's way of saying you're not meant to be alone. She looked up at him. I never believed her. Until you. His arms tightened around her. I'm glad you took my hand that day. In the vault. You took mine first. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her forehead. Baron Halvard offered me gold, weapons, artifacts worth more than some kingdoms, and I walked past all of it. To take the maid's hand. To take my future's hand. He smiled against her hair. Fair trade, I think. Veda laughed. The sound light and free. Freer than she'd ever felt in her life. More than fair. She thought about the girl who'd scrubbed floors and hidden her gift and dreamed of escape. That girl had wanted freedom more than anything, but freedom, Veda had learned, wasn't about running away. It was about choosing where to stay. And she'd chosen Calyx, chosen Valdris, chosen a life where her gift was celebrated, her love was returned, and her future stretched bright and open before her. Choose any treasure, the Baron had offered. The Alpha King had walked past the gold and taken her hand, and she'd given him her heart in return. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.